feel good to be back. On tonight's show, we're introducing you to the next generation of F1 Esports talent. Could there be a future champion in the mix? Well, it's time to find out.
What a bold move to start the season. And he's going to try and go all the way around the outside. Oh, no, they come together. That's a late lunge. Fantastic stuff there.
Right then, let me bring you up to speed and explain the show. More than 494,000 people started the journey to qualify for the 2021 F1 Esports Series. Now, a short list of 29 drivers remain from PC, PlayStation, Xbox and wildcard entries. They're all hoping to show off their skills in the Pro Exhibition assessments and catch the eye of our F1 Esports teams ahead of the Pro Draft later on in the year. It's very possible that one of them could go on to be this season's F1 Esports champion. And talking of champions, I'm joined by two right here because they're absolute all-round legends. I've got Nick Hamilton to my left, part of the furniture. He's been around the F1 Esports scene for a while now, very much part of the family. And on the other side, we have Naomi Schiff. Welcome, and very much part of the family already, only the first day. Nick, we'll come to you first of all. When the Pro Exhibition comes along, we know immediately we are in store for some amazing racing coming up in the F1 Esports Pro Series, aren't we?
Yeah, it's the dawn of a new season. How exciting. But yeah, great to see some fresh names, some new talent. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they've got in store. And I think it's going to be a great show.
Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic show. Obviously, you're from the world of British touring car. You're a driver in that, Nick. But it's great to have someone with some actual proper knowledge to the side of you. Naomi, great to have you on board. Competing in the W Series. Deliberately did that just to wind Nick up. It's going to be a long show and I can't wait. Naomi, and also you've just done practice ready for the new season, right? Down in Anglesey.
Absolutely. So we had our esports league last year. Unfortunately, the championship was cancelled due to COVID, but got some experience with esports, so I'm ready to talk about this today. But yeah, we just came from pre-season testing and we've got an exciting season coming up ahead as well. Yeah,
and Nick has pointed out how jealous he is of your sim setup. It's pretty super duper, is that right?
I guess you could call it that. I'm quite proud of my sim setup, I must say. Her name's Sierra, by the way.
Okay, named as well. Brilliant. Let's see you in action, actually, Naomi. Obviously, getting ready for trackside at the moment. But you have had that experience. This is you competing in the W Series sim racing event. What was it like? Did you had much experience beforehand?
No, I honestly didn't have much esports experience at all. And it was the beginning was very much a learning process. But the more I did it, the better I got, as you do. But I found it quite interesting, honestly, quite a challenge, and how lucky we are to be able to do our sport, quote unquote, from home. Yeah. So many sports people can't say that. So it was definitely an experience and I absolutely loved it. Okay, and Nick, obviously you're a dab hand on the sim wheel. Have you been getting a lot of practice time in?
Yeah, I've done dabbled a bit, bits and bobs. But yeah, I enjoy sim gaming. It's where I came from. It's where I started my career. So if I didn't have sim racing, sim gaming, I wouldn't be where I am today. Okay, well, a guy that competed in the F1 Esports Pro Series the last few years and is now actually racing in the European Le Mans Series. Right now, he's at the Paul Ricard circuit. It's the one and only Mr. Chen Bulabassi. There you are, sir.
Hello, Tom. How are you?
I'm very well. I've got Nick Hamilton and Naomi Schiff to my left. It looks glorious weather. There's a palm tree in the background. You're rubbing it in a little bit.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, honestly, I would have loved to be in the studio, obviously. But I'm also glad I'm in Paul Ricard because I have two races here back to back. This weekend I'm racing in GT4 European Series. And like you said, I have the European Le Mans Series. So it's quite a few for me in Le Castellet, let's say.
Yeah, do you feel like for a lot of the F1 Esports drivers that they would like to get into real-life racing, you're the bit of the inspiration? Do you feel that at all, Chem?
I mean, I hope I am inspiration, but thank you for that, if I feel like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm here, I'm where I am because, well, thanks to F1 Esports. So I'm really proud to be an F1 Esports player. So yeah, I mean, this is how I started my career as well. Okay. So I think it's a good transition to go from esports to real racing, as you can see. Yeah. Race car driver things right now in Poland.
Yeah. Well, listen, Chen, while we've still got you, the signal is holding up okay at the moment. But I want to talk to you about the first assessment that we set these 29 drivers, and that's the in-game event. We set the AI to 110%. It's really difficult. How difficult is that? You're driving as Max Verstappen in at the Red Bull Ring. What's it like? How difficult? Put it into context for everybody.
Okay, so I mean, I've done this elimination quite a few times, and it is quite difficult to even pass the, let's say, pass the test. But you need to, if it says like minimum P3, you need to go above that and make no mistakes, and also get no warnings. But the AI is super fast when it's 110%. So I think a normal player would really struggle to beat them. But obviously, we're talking about players in the world. So they should be faster than the AI, but it's the AI is no slouch in this game. It's quite difficult, you know.
Well, listen, I think you've put it into context right there, how difficult it is. Chen, we might catch up with you in a bit. I want to now take your attention, guys, to the in-game event. This is the demo. It's been put together by the one and only Mr. Matt Gallagher. Blimey, he wasn't rusty at all going into this.
So the difficulty is on 110% AI, the hardest you can possibly get on the F1 game. So I'm not expecting to even catch Perez, to be honest, but we are on fresh soft tyres. Everyone in front is on mediums, so they're going to be struggling. But at the same time, you have to have some sort of talent, which is not what I have, because I haven't been given headphones. But 110% AI essentially gives you the biggest challenge possible, not just purely down for pace, but the drivers will also defend much more aggressively. So it really does test your racecraft, but also just being able to be patient enough to not just send it up the inside, because if you touch them a little bit, get a warning, that's score lost. If you pump them off completely and get a penalty, that's even more score lost. If you corner cut trying to get past them, score lost. You kind of get the idea. Danny Kvyat's the fastest lap. So yeah, Perez is actually slightly pulling away, but it's fine. But in terms of the actual targets, probably for the top F1 Esports guys, you've got to be getting on the podium at the very least, especially with Max Verstappen on fresh tyres. But 110% AI, honestly, if you've never tried it, it's very difficult, even in a fast car like Max Verstappen's. So yeah, you have to push really hard, but also keep it within those white lines, because you don't want to lose any score, especially if you want to get right at the top. You won't get one warning, you won't get one little touch on any of the AI drivers, because you will lose that crucial bit of score that someone out there is going to get the perfect run, which will take a lot of time as well, because you know the drivers have got as many opportunities to get the fastest time and score possible. So it really, for me, tests exactly the sort of minerals, as I like to call it, of the drivers, and how much motivation they have to sit down, improve, understand. Okay, as I go one-handed, I'm just chatting along now, really. But in terms of improvements, they just need to think about, okay, how can I pass Perez better on the first lap? How do I then get Ocon, who's the next driver in front, in the perfect part of the circuit? And sometimes there's a little bit of luck, don't get me wrong, but it's mainly skill, which I don't have.
I'll tell you what, when we threw that upon Matt Gallagher when he got to the studio, he was a little bit furious. He'd had no practice time, but I thought he did an amazing job there and just showing how difficult it is in that in-game assessment. Naomi, I want to look at the DHL time trial, and we're racing round Silverstone here. It's one lap, it's a hot lap. Does Silverstone lend itself well to this sort of challenge?
I do think it does. I mean, on any circuit, a hot lap is always a big challenge. I find that compared to racing, which is a lot more instinctive, hot laps or qualifying laps are a lot more precision and yeah, no error type of driving and much more conscious. So I think the pressure will be on, and it will definitely be a challenge no matter where they are.
Okay, and you wouldn't have liked that if we'd have just thrown that on you. Can you show us the in-game assessment? You wouldn't have liked that, would you?
Well, I think everyone likes to be prepared for things, but if you've got to do it, you've got to do it. What can you say? Exactly,
and Matt did a brilliant job. We'll chat to him very shortly. In the meantime, though, let's have a look at him doing the DHL time trial.
Okay, so this one, Silverstone, this is the one-lap knockout assessment. So this is all about pure pace, but also making sure you don't exceed those track limits, because it can be pretty harsh on this Codemasters game, where if you just go over those white lines, which can gain you some time, and that's the reason why that ruling is there, is to make sure that you don't basically gain time unfairly. So it's a 1v1, so it's not necessarily going as fast as maybe the absolute 100%, because you might even want to assess what the other driver, or who the other driver is that you're up against. You might feel like you've got a 10th in the locker over their pure pace. So there's loads of different mind games that can go on during this one-lap knockout. And also the fact is, they will know if they're ahead or behind, because it will say it in the top left-hand side of the screen whether you are ahead or behind. So it could almost influence how they drive the rest of the lap. But the crucial thing is, they don't really know how far ahead or behind they are until they get to the sector split. So it's all about just absolutely pedal to the metal, time trial stuff. But if you invalidate, that's it, game over. If you spin, that's another thing that you just have to make sure you don't push that extra % or two, because the F1 teams will be looking to see if you can handle that pressure. Of course, it is a best of 3, so if you mess up once, you have got another opportunity to get revenge on your opponent. But at the same time, you just have to make sure you get on the board, set a good banker in that first round, and it'll set you on a good foundation for that second round and potentially clinch the win. And of course, you have to be consistent throughout, because you have to beat one person, and if you do, you go through to the next round, then the next round, then the final. So you can't just turn up against one of the drivers, you have to turn up against all of them.
All right, can't wait for the DHL time trial there. Nick, I was going to call you Nat for a second then. What happened there? Nick, you are part of the furniture. You've been around here for a long time, Nick. I won't do that again. I want to talk about the races now, on the dry and in the wet, really pushing their drivers in terms of their skill set.
Yeah, definitely. But definitely because they can do a lot of practice, I would say, in the dry, and then straight away go into wet conditions. So I think they're going to start out at Bahrain, and that has everything in terms of what a circuit needs: high speed, slow speed, medium speed corners. And then you go to a track like China, which can be really difficult in the wet, and it's all about precision, making sure that you got plenty of traction and throttle modulation when exiting corners. I think is crucial in the wet, especially when there's no traction control in these cars.
Yeah, and what about that ghost feature? Obviously, that will help the drivers to really just concentrate on just setting that fast pace.
Yeah, but it also could be quite off-putting, because yes, you can't collide with the car in front of you, but you've got to almost ignore the fact that they're there. And the whole point of it being ghosted is so that you know, there's no lag issues or anybody gets in each other's way. But it definitely could end up being quite off-putting. But these guys, you know, they know what they're doing. They've been here long enough, I would say, or been driving the cars long enough, or the game long enough, to make sure that it doesn't affect them.
Okay, well, here we go then. Let's take a look at the 2020 Pro Championship drivers setting their benchmarks.
Welcome to the F1 Esports Series Pro Exhibition.
Right then, we will head to Bahrain, and these are the best of the best. We watched them all season. Nick, and just phenomenal. We mention it every time, just the times they set, they don't make any mistakes.
Yeah, they are so robotic. It's incredible. And yeah, Freddie Rasmussen and Nicolas Longuet, you know, they're names we've seen constantly at the front. And Danny Moreno now looking like he's doing the job, having been promoted or signed a new deal with Mercedes, and you know, coming from McLaren, we saw how good he was, didn't we? But he's really now proving his worth, taking the victory there. But it's great to see these guys at their best, and this is just the Pro Exhibition.
Yeah, Naomi, we're heading to China now to see what they could do in the wet. And you've got the likes of Freddie Rasmussen, he's been there or thereabouts in terms of that Red Bull winning consistently. But in terms of this benchmark, it does, I don't know if it adds pressure to the guys that are in the Pro Exhibition. They know they've got to match these times, and they're not quite there because these guys have had all that experience. But would that be a daunting thing for the drivers, or do they have to just go head on and get into it?
Well, of course, that's going to be putting pressure on them. I think when you've got a specific target to meet, it makes it just that much more, you know exactly how far you are away from it. So that'll be putting pressure on them. But at the same time, it's kind of like dangling a carrot, and it'll also motivate them. And I think it might be what they need to know how far or how close the limit is to where they are. Yeah,
I'm watching Daniele Haddad, who didn't have the season he wanted at Racing Point last year. Freddie Rasmussen, as we know, team championship in the bag, him and Marcel Kiefer. But I like this head-to-head. We get to see some of the best drivers, like Nicolas Longuet at the moment, and Alvaro Carreton, who had a brilliant season for Williams. Thank you very much. You know what? I put it on. There he is. He's a cheeky guy. I add that in just for him. And Danny Moreno, a rookie last year. So he is, I guess, that gateway for the guys in the Pro Exhibition. Hey, I could be like Danny Moreno. I could be competing with the top guys and doing really well.
Yeah, I think we all want to be like Dan Moreno right now. You know, coming in, to the series, rookie, and doing such a fantastic job in his first season, and now being regarded as one of the top drivers, I would say. And yeah, I think it's looking very, very strong for him.
Okay, and in terms of driving, Naomi, obviously with your experience on the sim, how different is it? And I asked Nick earlier, driving in the dry and the wet, what sort of preparation do you need to go into those tracks?
Well, I mean, obviously dry and wet is a totally different driving style. You've got to be a lot more patient, a lot more careful, a lot more calculated in the rain. And it's a much more smooth driving style. On the sim, it's the same, I would say. There's no big difference there. There definitely are differences between the real world and the racing world on the sim. But in terms of wet and dry, I'd say it's the same sort of approach.
Yeah, okay, Naomi, Nick, you obviously know Matt Gallagher, but Naomi, if you haven't met Matt Gallagher, he's exceptional. I love him to bits. He's been there since day one. He's over at the touchscreen. What's been happening there, Matt?
Tom, you're always so lovely to me. I feel like I've kind of come full circle. I started on the touchscreen and I'm back once again. But yeah, we're going to run through the benchmarks. So we just saw a bit of footage from the best of the best, setting the very top, cream of the crop sort of stuff. So let's take a look at Bahrain, one of the first challenges that the drivers will have to do. This is the benchmarking. This is the F1 Esports guys and Danny Moreno with a 20-minute 53.3. If anybody beats that, dry, 25% race in Bahrain. They've done an exceptional job. You got Caraton, love the R's, Tom, by the way. Rasmussen as well. Freddie Rasmussen, can't believe he doesn't have a driver's title yet, but he's managed to secure those constructors' titles every single time. So very excited to see where our new breed of F1 Esports drivers, how close they can get to these guys. So let's take a look at China now. So moving on there, we've got Freddie Rasmussen, actually. So this was, of course, a wet session. Ghosted, just like Bahrain, so no collisions, no excuses for being slow. All you got to do is drive as fast as you can. Of course, there is a mandatory pit stop as well. Not for the wet, though. But, of course, Freddie Rasmussen right at the top, 4 seconds clear of the rest of the field. We don't see many wet races in this F1 Esports Pro Series, so I'd like to see another one, because Freddie Rasmussen clearly very quick. If anyone beats that, it'll blow my socks off. So, yeah, there's China. Brendan Lee down in P4, of course, in that new Ferrari. But, yeah, down the bottom, we probably won't take a look so much at Tomé Bresneda and Collegon. Probably not too happy. Nicholas Longuet, amazing in qualifying, but didn't manage to get there. Of course, the other two that we have, the other two challenges, of course, we got the Max Verstappen, sort of 5 laps left, which I ran you through, of exactly, scoring the highest you can. 172,388 is the benchmark score. And not only that, it's the highest score in the world right now, Danny Moreno. So he's got a little virtual trophy, not something that we've sent him just yet. I'm sure now that I've said it, someone will have to. But Danny Moreno, fastest in the world. So literally, if anyone beats it today, they are the best ever. Maybe not. But anyway, so there's that. And then the other 4th challenge is the time trial knockouts. So that's like a new format, 1 lap, best of 3, and it's 1v1s, and it's kind of a ladder thing, and eventually get to the finals. And the fastest time we saw from the F1 Esports drivers was a 1 minute 23.522 from Alvaro Caraton. So there you go. So there you go. There you go, Tom. I've done all your R's for you. What else you got for me?
Championship-style work there, Matt Gallagher. But I would like to talk to an actual champion right now, and that is, of course, the F1 Esports Pro Series current champion, the one and only Jarno Opmeer. Jarno, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. It's been a while, isn't it? I think it was 5 months ago for last time I spoke to you over the camera. So thank you for having me. Really excited to be here, of course.
Yeah, you were I'd say your mood then was jubilation, excitement. You'd just become the champion. You were very happy. Are you still feeling like a champion right now?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm going to be world champion until the last event of 2021 at least. So, yeah, I'm going to enjoy it until then at least. I hope I'll be champion again, of course, this year with Mercedes. So, yeah, going to be an exciting year for sure. Really looking forward to the new game as well, and to drive against some new drivers probably as well.
Yeah, I want to ask, obviously that move's happened, very excited for you, new setup, new team. Did you feel like you could have been the champion last year? And that's kind of the mentality that I guess you would have to have for these guys competing in the Pro Exhibition, Jarno. So if you feel like a champion, you feel like you can succeed, that will help you along, right?
Yeah, especially in those very tight qualifying sessions, of course. I think last year I had a few times where I just went into Q2 by a few thousandths of a second. And, well, I think this year it's going to be slightly better for me going into those full qualifying sessions with a lot more experience and knowing I've already won the championship last year. So I think that confidence is definitely going to help me. especially in those Q1 sessions where I felt like I was a bit weaker compared to most people. And then I hope, obviously, I will keep my strength, which is the longer races. I hope this year we're driving slightly longer races than last year, because I really feel like it helps me with the alternate strategy, of course.
Well, here's the thing, Jano, I want to kind of put you on the spot, and you might not want to give helpful advice for potentially some competitors for this season, but what advice would you give to the best of the best that are in the Pro Exhibition?
Yeah, of course, practice is very important, but at the same time, you need to know what your limit is. I think in 2019 I was practicing way too much and it really didn't work for me. Might be different for other people. So you really need to know what works for yourself with a lot of things, driving-wise and practicing-wise and so on. I think that's really important, not just with sim racing, but with other things in life as well. So yeah, my advice would be just really do what you feel best with.
Okay, well, listen, I've been told I can't ask you about your gym workouts or how much you're benching, Jano, so we'll move on to my next question, which was going to be to you, Jano. You've got some amazing upcoming talent. Have you noticed any of the drivers in the league races that you've been doing?
Yeah, definitely. There's been a few drivers that I'm quite impressed with on league racing level. Of course, F1 Esports is going to be another step higher. I've seen Valentin Bruffer, Nicolas Matteo, Josh Idowu, Alessio Di Capua, all people who really impressed me in the Pro Exhibition and in not Pro Exhibition, sorry, in the Challengers and in league racing. So yeah, I think those are going to be people we have to watch out for. There might be others coming from console as well. I don't really follow the league racing scene on console as well as on PC as well. I drive myself on PC, of course. So yeah, I think those are four that I really look forward to racing against in the future. They might obviously not straight away be in the first pick of their team in the first few races, but I'm sure if they practice a lot and work really hard, we will see them in the Pro Series.
Yeah, well, listen, Jano, I know you've got your work cut out for you. Danny Moreno's looking very good. So I can't wait to watch you in the F1 Esports Pro Series later on this year. Thank you very much for giving us your time, Jano.
No worries, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, brilliant stuff from Jano Opmeer, moved from Alfa Romeo to Mercedes. Can he win back-to-back titles? Only time will tell. In the meantime, though, let's see what happened in the PC assessments.
Welcome to the Formula 1 Esports Series Pro Exhibition.
So here we go then, Nick, Naomi, the PC assessments. Alessio Di Capua, if you're unfamiliar with him, twice he's been part of the pro draft, ready to be drafted into one of the F1 Esports teams. Hasn't made it yet, but he has got some real good pedigree going into this race. Started on pole in this one.
Yeah, it looks like he's got a lot to give, and a lot of pace, a lot of strength, a lot of consistency, and this guy as well, Josh Idowu, looking like he's got a lot of talent as well. So I think the PC guys are looking really super strong, and Alessio Di Capua definitely heading that up, I would say, with Idowu really close behind.
Very close behind. He's a name to watch out for this year. Couldn't compete for McLaren or any of the teams last year because of a technicality, but he is raring, ready to go. Jano mentioned about patience, Naomi. How important is that? And can you explain from your perspective what that means?
Yeah, no, I think patience is a very important one. I mean, from my own experience in the esports league last year, it was extremely important. Obviously, they've got track limits and all these sorts of kind of challenges that you don't really experience in the real world. Obviously, we've got track limits, but on the computer, it's black or white. There is no grey zone. So you've got to be really patient. You've got to be you've got to have your precision, got to be on top of everything, but be patient with it and not overdo it. It's key.
Really key there. Alessio Di Capua, I'm predicting, I'm going to throw it out there, this is what this show's all about. I'm going to put a bet out there with you, Nick. Maybe Ferrari comes in from because of that Italian connection. Could it happen?
Why not? I mean, you'll have to wait and see how close you are, Tom, with that. But this is a mistake from Samuel Liebert in the time trial challenge, isn't it? And yeah, you can see that's a big mistake from him, which is unfortunate, Tom.
Okay, DHL time trial is happening right here, and I'm looking at this. Samuel Liebert, I'm going to put out there because he's part of the R8G Esports. Maybe Haas signing. I'm basically gossip corner for part of this show. And also, Sebastian Job. In terms of fine margins, you talked about exceeding limits. He could have been in the second series of F1 Esports, but exceeded the pit lane speed and therefore didn't make it. And that's the fine margins you were sort of alluding to, really.
Absolutely. I think it's really unfortunate when those kind of things happen, but they do happen. We are all human, but it's really important to avoid those kind of things because they can really cost you in the long run. So unfortunate that happened.
Yeah, okay. Well, listen, Matt knows all about those fine margins. He's always at the top. Matt, can you talk us through the leaderboards, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm not always at the top, nowhere near anymore, Tom, but thank you. I appreciate it. Let's take a look at the PC leaderboards then. First up, we have the in-game event leaderboard. Of course, that's the Max Verstappen 5-lap-ish challenge around Austria. And Alessio Di Capua was only 32 points, if my maths are correct, behind Danny Moreno, which is the #1 score in the entire world. So Di Capua has put in a huge amount of time to get that score. So second in the world. Pretty awesome stuff. Idowu not too far behind as well. And my kind of benchmark is 170,000 or above is a pretty decent score. Anything below, I feel like they maybe could have put in a little bit more time and effort because you can have as many goes as you want. So surely you want to be achieving the top sort of 4 or 5 scores. But Sebastian Job as well, P5, not too bad of a performance for him. He's well known in the sim racing community for being pretty competent in all platforms. So I'm interested to see how he does across this entire assessment. Moving over to Bahrain now. You'd think Di Capua would win, but he doesn't. In fact, it's Idowu, who we've seen race in the F1 Esports races. I think last year we saw him in a couple, and he was pretty good around Canada, I believe. So he won the Bahrain race, dry, 25%, ghosting. So it's all about pace and nothing else. Di Capua less than a second behind. You look a little bit further down. Job down in 7th, not particularly great. And Liebert, who we saw that mistake in the 1v1s, also down in 10th. So it's just going to be affecting your overall score at the end of the day. Let's move to China now, my favourite track in the world. This was in the wet, which is so difficult to get really fast on. You can see Patrick Sipos it's just come out of nowhere and is in P1, and it just kind of shows that adaptability that maybe Patrick has that some other drivers may not. Di Capua down in P4, 3.5 seconds back. Of course, again, ghosting, so no chances of crashing or anything like that. It's all down to mistakes and just your overall pace. Looking a bit further down, Liebert again down in P10, so not worked out too well for him, but he needs to make sure that at least one of the assessments is good. Let's take a look at the 1v1s now around Silverstone, and you can see Idowu was the eventual winner. Sebastian Job got into the finals. Di Capua only managed to make it through one round. So again, very interesting to see the kind of the drivers making some strengths in some areas and maybe not in others. And that's what the F1 teams are going to be watching. Tom, what are you going to be watching?
Thank you very much, Matt, for giving us the standings in the PC category there. Now, we'll be chatting to you in a bit, but in the meantime, I have been joined by a racing legend, Romain Grosjean. Welcome to the Gfinity Arena. Welcome to the F1 Esports Series Pro Exhibition. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you very much.
What a year it has been for you. The man who walked through fire, finishing P2 in the Indy GP, an incredible year. How are you doing? I know that sounds like a big question, but are you well?
I mean, yes, I'm well. I've been through a lot in the last 6 months, but you know, from the crash to my rehab to getting back behind my simulator first of all, and then a racing wheel in IndyCar to pole position and podium in Indy GP. So it's been a cool journey, and I'm excited about my time in the US and really enjoying it.
Yeah, you look like you were enjoying it. And I have to say, I'm loving the setup behind you at the moment. That is a proper sim racing setup. I have to ask, though, Romain, you're now a team principal of R8G. And I really kind of want to ask you, for the drivers that we're looking at today, what do you look for in a driver apart from their on-track skills?
Well, you know, I think esport it's really booming, and the F1 Esports is definitively one of the most professional category and race you want to be in. So the drivers to be fast, that's the first thing, and that will always be the essence of racing in general. But then also they need to be able, you know, to represent the brand in a good way, to behave, to be consistent, to not make any mistakes, to have good communication. So basically, pretty much everything you're asking to have a real Formula One driver.
Yeah, no doubt. When in the world of presenting, I make a lot of mistakes, so I probably wouldn't make it. I have to say, Roman, I want to take you back to your young driving career when you were starting out. Did you have a plan for how to attract teams to potentially sign you?
I think it was at the time he was going fast, winning races and making sure to be the drivers that they wanted to have on board. I think that's really what you're looking for when you start racing is to be competitive, consistent, not making a mistake, and try to be the first name that comes out of the discussion when a team is looking for a new driver.
Yeah, OK, that's good for the guys to take that on board. And I want to know as well, from your perspective and opinion, if a driver's really good, because we've got a lot that've got the particular skills of setting up the car for a certain circuit or conditions on the track, is that something a team would be looking for?
Yes, definitely. That's also one of the quality you need to have, is to be able to set up the car to the best on a track and to extract the maximum of it. And that is very important. You know, you're racing very different tracks around the world. From like a Monaco to a Monza, which is completely the opposite of one or the other. And definitely the car will be set up differently. Your driving style will be slightly different as well. And that's why you need to be able to set it up and adapt to go as fast as you can.
Yeah, and that might be quite good for them because they might not be the one or two driver, but they're joining the team to help. I want to ask you, Roman, then I'll put you on the spot with this. Could we possibly see you joining next year and maybe coming to the Gfinity Arena?
Good question. I mean, so far I haven't been fast on the game, if I'm being honest. I've been trying to play the Formula One game, but I haven't found the sweet spot yet. So definitely I need to do some more practice before joining in, because, you know, I'm a competitor, and if I enter an esports event, I want to do well. So, you know, if my lap time gets somewhere and with the drivers, they can train me, then, you know, I won't say no.
No, we wouldn't say no either. Roman, one final question to you. There is a particular driver that's actually signed with your team, I believe, at R8G, Leaderboard. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yes, Samuel is a member of RIG Esports, and he's gone through the qualification process to become a professional F1 Esports driver. And, you know, I think Samuel is really motivated. He's done a lot of work, and I can follow from behind the scene and see how much it's going on. And you know, those guys are really professional into sim racing, and that's what I want to see. I want to see sim racing going to the next level, and I think that's what's happening right now, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, listen, Roman, thank you so much for your time and being part of the F1 Esports Pro exhibition. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
So there you go then. Great to chat to Roman. Now, one thing I didn't mention during the Pro exhibition, we've got some player ratings cards, which I'm very excited about. Pace, experience, adaptability, consistency, and an overall rating. It's about to happen right now for the PC guys. I want to bring back in Chen now. Alessio Di Capua, 93 overall. Now, you've raced against this guy. Are you saying he is the best driver out there, Chen?
Oh, that's hard to judge, because I would say, I think they're all able to win races here. So would I rate him higher than someone like Sebastian Job? I don't know, because I've raced against Sebastian, or I've been teammates with Sebastian for a long time, but he's new to F1 games. So I think in terms of pace, I'll probably give Seb the edge here, but I know Alessio and Josh are both super fast, so I think they're pretty close.
OK, so basically what he said there, Nick, is he doesn't agree with these ratings. I don't know who's made these ratings. I like them, though. It's kind of like a top trumps-esque bill. Yeah, but Jem, those ways of grading in terms of pace and experience, that's an exciting way to look at these drivers for the F1 Esports teams to potentially sign them in the draft, right?
Yeah, but I think these are based off data, right? They're not based off actual real life or real competition. So you could see actually Adowu in the competitions that he had initially in the races, he actually beating Capua, and so it doesn't necessarily correlate directly to the player card. So from what Chem's saying exactly is correct, but you never know, and it's looking like De Capua is definitely strong, as well as Sebastian Job, but all three of them are looking very good.
Well, someone has to be at the top, so Alessio's got 93. Further down, and I'm not saying worse off cards, but they haven't got the same overall rating. 75 experience. That seems unfair to me, Naomi, to bring him down a bit, Patrick Sipos, because he raced so well. Brilliant pace. It seems unfair because he hasn't been able to get that experience. Or do you agree?
No, I do agree. I think at the end of the day, they all got different characteristics and strengths and weaknesses. It is slightly harsh to judge them on their experience. However, teams will be looking for people who have experience because it is valuable. But there's other points, where he makes up where potentially Samuel, for example, in pace lacks a little bit. So it might just balance things out a little bit more, but it gives the team an overview of what they're dealing with.
Okay, Samuel Lieber, Chem, raced against him because I want your perspective. He spun during the head-to-head and he will be livid with that. Do you reckon that's how he'll be feeling?
Yeah, I mean, you should be gutted about that. It happens, though. He's a human. We all make mistakes, but obviously he would want to capitalize on that. So I think he's going to push really hard. But I think he's a good driver. He should be up there in terms of pace as well. I mean, I trust in him. I think Roman Grosjean also trusts in him as well. So I don't think we should really underrate him.
Okay, final question to you, Chen, putting you on the spot. If you had to give yourself an overall rating, what are you saying? Out of 100, what are you giving yourself?
Out of 100. Okay. 89.5.
Oh, I thought he was going to go higher. That's very modest. What would you give yourself, Nick?
Me? I'll give myself maybe 85.
Are we giving F1 Esports or?
Oh, just you gave yourself out of 100
now, right?
Okay, fair enough.
But this is on F1 Esports, right? Are we talking about F1 Esports or is it real racing? Or because I remember you giving me quite a low point back in the days, Tom.
Yeah.
I remember. I think I had good pace. But
sorry, Chem, sorry, we're losing you. Chem, we're losing you in the signal. I must go now because your backdrop is annoying me. It's so beautiful. Listen, with two incredible drivers from the F1 Esports China Championship participating in the Pro Exhibition, it's time to turn back the clock to January of this year to see how the grand finals of this ultra-competitive event turned out.
The famous Shanghai Pudong Media Center witnessed an intense battle to decide who would be crowned winner of the F1 Esports Series China Championship 2020. This epic event amassed over 53 million views across the season, with an incredible 4 million watching the grand final live. Fans were not left disappointed at the spectacle, which included expert commentary from renowned Formula 2 driver Guan Yu Zhou. 54,000 participants from all over China were whittled down to just 100 racers for the final two-day event. It included 2 Pro League races around the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, as well as the Yas Marina circuit of Abu Dhabi. Superstar esport racer Yan Yifan had already clinched the Drivers' Championship earlier in the season, but the team title was still up for grabs. 2019 winner Tang Qianyu's BT team led the way into the final rounds, but Yifan's LHR team managed to close the gap after day one with just 12 points the difference. It would all come down to the final race, and an audience of VIP guests witnessed some of the very best e-gamers in action. Qianyu started on pole for the BT team, but it was LHR's Yifan that led into the first corner. The battle for the lead was hard fought, but Yifan remained in front. After the pit stops, LHR's Yifan found himself behind Qianyu's BT teammate Hao Wang. With some strong defending in the last couple of laps, Wang went on to take the victory, and with it, he claimed the championship for his BT team too. Besides the trophies and prize money, both Tang Qianyu and Yuan Yifan will now continue their F1 Esports journey to London to compete in the Pro Exhibition. The ultimate aim to be selected by one of the 10 official F1 Esports teams.
I tell you what, how incredible did that event look all the way in Shanghai. I would have loved to have been there myself, but I'm about to speak to a man who was there in person, the one and only Guan Yu Zhou, joining me now in the Gfinity Arena. Welcome to the show.
Hiya, how are you? All good?
Do you know what? I am very good, and I think I'm saying it's right. I heard it the other day. Monaco, baby. Guan Yu, how good was that to win?
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. I mean, that's a track I think I would like to win or take a victory there, and all the drivers would love to drive in there and take a victory that weekend. It was something fantastic.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I wish you all the best of luck for the rest of the F2 season. I want to ask you, because you had a winning feeling during the virtual Grand Prix. You were the first ever winner of that. Last year, as a driver, how good was sim racing for you during the lockdown?
Yeah, it was actually really enjoyable, really fun. Tell you what, actually, that first virtual Grand Prix win, I think I got more messages on my social media than did my podium in 2019 Formula 2 races. So that was actually quite interesting and quite cool to have. And yeah, it was really nice. I don't really got a lot of laps, practicing to the sim racing, but to be arriving with the victory, the first ever virtual Grand Prix, it felt pretty good. And Cyril was happy as well, can tell you that.
I tell you what, the sim racing community are very active on social media, so they were giving you that love that you deserve. I want to ask you, actually, you were the guest commentator out in China for the F1 Esports China series. What was that like commentating, and have you got a bit of a taste for commentating now?
Yeah, I do, actually. It was actually my first ever time being a commentator. I feel like that job in commentator is not as easy as driving, but I guess you have a different point of view. But it was really fun, looking at all the fans of racing in China battle against each other, and it was actually really entertaining, and I had a good time.
Yeah, I tell you what, Guan Yu, you're definitely an inspiration for a lot of Chinese drivers over in China, and it seems to be growing from strength to strength, the F1 Esports community. How long do you think it will be before we have a Chinese champion?
Well, hopefully, the next few years. Obviously, the esports in China started 2 years ago, and since that, I can see, quite easily how many people is getting more into esports, and there's more competition every year. The level goes higher, and so which is good to see. And hopefully, the next few years, obviously, against the best esports sim race in the world, it's not easy, but I'm sure one day they will, find their way to the top.
Yeah, I tell you what, I look forward to chatting to our Chinese competitors later on. But Guan Yu Zhou, an absolute pleasure. Look forward to having you down in the studio, maybe for the F1 Esports Pro Series, if you're up for it. Yeah,
definitely I will be. Obviously, it's quite a busy season ahead, but if I got a chance, I would love to, join with you guys and having a look at these quite interesting races.
All right. Well, listen, Guan Yu Zhou, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you. Take care, you too.
Right then, if there was someone who could help me to tell me how the Chinese drivers got on in their assessments, if only there was... Hey, Matt, could you help me?
Go on then. OK, thanks, Tom. Right, yeah, so it's great to have those two from the China Champs get involved in this assessment series. And there they are. They've got quite interesting or differing seating positions, which I'm sure we'll see in this VT. But yeah, I think they found it quite difficult, especially Bahrain. Yuan Yifan we're seeing right now, and Tang Qianyu as well. Down in 9th and 11th, not great. Look at that seating position. That's certainly something I'd want to adjust if I was his driving coach. Anyway, Bahrain was a little bit of a difficult one, but they are up against the very best. There's Joshua Duwu, who was up in 2nd by the end of the race, and Alessa de Couper, of course, very difficult split for them to be involved in. But Tang Qianyu in China up in P5 in the wet. So clearly something that just worked and clicked with him in these really difficult conditions. And Yuan Yifan, unfortunately, still struggling a little bit. Of course, no contact, nothing of the sort, as it's all ghosting. But my goodness me, I just can't get over that posture. But something that maybe he'll change in the future. Then, of course, the 1v1s, they did struggle. I'm not going to lie to you. They both didn't manage to make it through the 1v1s. But again, it's such a difficult split, this PC split. And I think they've done themselves proud, of course. They were very closely matched, both of them. And here we go then, the in-game event leaderboard. This was the first one. This was the single player against the AI, Max Verstappen, and they were so unbelievably close. Less than 300 points between Qianyu and Yifan, but Qianyu won out on that one. Then we moved to Bahrain, and we've got the leaderboard there as well. We've got them highlighted beautifully. Yifan up in 8th, Qianyu down in 11th. As I said, Bahrain was a bit of a struggle for both of them. Then we moved to China, and this is where Tang Qianyu really came into his own. 7.7 seconds off of Sipos, who was the eventual winner. But P5, I'd be very proud of that. Yifan down in 9th, still managed to beat a couple of... Li Bear especially is very experienced in the sim racing scene. Then we moved to the final one, which was the 1v1 brackets, the one-lap knockouts, whatever you want to call it. And unfortunately, neither of them managed to progress in this particular series of events. But it was really awesome to see them both involved. They were so passionate, excited to be a part of it. And Tom, I'm sure you would be too.
Oh, I tell you what, Matt, you are so good on that touchscreen. F1, sign him up. In the meantime, I am now about to be joined on the F1 Esports Pro Exhibition show by our Chinese competitors. I have joining me all the way from China right now, Tang Tinyao and Yuan Yifan. Gentlemen, so good to see you and to have you in the Gfinity arena with me. Yuan, I'll come to you first. Congratulations, need to be said, on winning the F1 Esports Series China champion. That is you. Tell me about winning that trophy and what it meant to you.
Yeah, first of all, it feels great. Different to the two races format to decide the championship in 2019. 2020 was our first season to have such a wonderful 17 rounds pro league, competing with Tian and all other great Chinese drivers in a 9 months long season. Personally, I felt great to beat Tian to become 2020 China champion, especially after I lost the title to Tian in 2019. It was a revenge for me, and I know I totally deserve the title. But at the same time, I know that the title can only represent that I am one of the best Chinese F1 esports driver. There is still a big gap between me and the top level drivers considered on the pace and skill levels. I cannot just satisfy to win the China championship. We have to work hard and trying to close our gap to the top drivers in the world.
Yeah, well, I love that attitude, Yuan. And Tang's with you right now. Tang, I know you're majoring in finance. You're very busy. You've been testing an F4 car as well recently. Tell me, first of all, team championship, a dramatic final. What did it mean to you last year?
Yeah, it was a tough one, and I was suffering from the brake pedal during the last round of the race. And so I just couldn't do trail braking into the corner very well for every corner. And I lost nearly 0.8 seconds per lap. And also during the final race, in Spain, I got a puncture in turn 9, and which cost me a place. And after the race, the result from Spain meant that my team would only got 14-point lead into the final, into the very last race of the final round in Abu Dhabi, and my teammate and I were faced with huge pressure. Luckily, I managed to do well in the qualifying of Abu Dhabi and get the most important pole position of the season. And during the race, Yuan and I were involved in an accident, and we are both out of the out of the fight for win. And but fortunately, my teammate won the final race and helped our team to win the team championship. And yeah, the whole season was very tough, and we got a maybe 13 round of the races. So we are faced with very huge pressure, and feel really relaxed after winning the championship. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the fact that you are currently being filmed while we're chatting to you. That's the sort of level of stardom you're experiencing in China right now, representing F1 Esports over in China. What is it like? I'm going to ask you that as my final question to both of you. What's it like being the stars? Tang?
I think it's feeling some kind of great, some feeling. I mean, it's an honor, but it's also a kind of pressure. After the first year's race, I think we are both maybe the two stars of the sim racing in China, but we have the opportunity to show our talent and race against the top level drivers around the world.
I can't wait to have you here in the Gfinity arena when that's possible. Thank you very much for your time, and the best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you.
So there you go. Great to chat to the guys. One thing I noticed, though, in China, they get dancers. Because I'm going to sort that out for the next F1 Esports Pro Series. I want dancers on this main stage. One thing I did notice, and I want to look at the player cards right now, there is nothing to separate between these two drivers, Nick, Naomi. You look at that, 85.5, and for good reason. Previous year, Tang won it, then this year, Yuan won it. I mean, that's the sort of level. There's nothing to separate them.
Yeah, you can see they're so tightly compact there, and they've taken a season and a championship off one another. So yeah, the slightest of mistakes, and that could be a championship win or loss for them. But yeah, it's so great to see both of them representing China and so close.
Did you notice, Naomi, how irate Nick got with the upright seating of Tang? I don't know if he's mentioned that. What happened there? I mean, he got agitated.
I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure why he got quite as agitated as he was, but I do get it as a driver. I'm quite particular about my seating position, and I find it quite impressive how they managed to have any feeling whatsoever sitting upright like that. So the fact that they are where they are, sitting like that, is really impressive.
Hey, we can't all have such a brilliant sim rig that you have, Naomi, but we'll talk about that in a bit. In the meantime, Matt Gallagher did some filming earlier on. Someone's edited it, so we're going to have to show it. Look at the race demo now.
Okay, so this is probably the trickiest challenge of the lot, especially with me behind the wheel. And it's China in the wet. I mean, the wet conditions in time trial are so wet, and it will be exactly the same for these drivers that do the 25% ghost race. It is, of course, it's down to their pace, but it's also down to their consistency. That's the key thing in this, because you can easily make a mistake in these conditions. You can't go anywhere near as fast as you would in the dry, as I am so close to the grass. It's frightening. But it's just one of the trickiest things I'd say for me, as I'm trying to get round the first part of China, but literally there's no front end whatsoever, is the traction. You just have to be so careful on the power. As the rear tyres want to spin up in even fifth gear, as I look at the camera and I just smacked a braking marker off the track. So the biggest thing for me is managing the traction of these cars in these conditions. The rear tyres want to spin up so much because there's so much torque going through the rear of the car, and you have to upshift so early to just try and get any sort of traction, because if you just light it up in sort of second or third gear, the rears just start screaming, and then you'll be sliding and off into the barrier. So you'll see a lot of the pro drivers upshifting so early out of these corners just to get any sort of traction, and you'll notice that that's how they get the best momentum, especially around that long right-hander at China onto the long straight. That corner's tricky in the dry, let alone the wet. Then this hairpin as well, spotting the braking point. Remember that these drivers will be using no assists, so that includes no ABS, which helps you brake. So none of that which means you have to monitor your braking to absolute perfection, because it's so easy to lock up in the wet. The dry is a little bit easier to manage, but this is just a brilliant challenge for the drivers, and it will really give the F1 Esports teams a good idea as to who is the most adaptable, because this is where you need to be quick, not only in the dry, because you can have these crazy random races sometimes where the wet is a factor. So I'm really interested to see how these drivers do, and the ones that finish at the top of this assessment and potentially the single player one are the two key assessments for me.
Yeah, there's my boy Matt Gallagher showing how it's done in that demo. It also shows how good an edit is and can be. It's time now to look at the Xbox assessments.
Welcome to the F1 Esports Series Pro Exhibition.
Just to be fair, though, Matt knows fully well, and it's good banter, it's fair banter, because he knows how good I am on the sim, which is rubbish. Nick, I want to talk about this guy, Gabriele Menghetti's showing that consistently and through history, Xbox drivers don't do as well as those who are starting out on the PC or PS4, and he's changing that. He's, going against the grain with that, and that's good to see.
Yeah, it is, definitely. I mean, he's only a couple of seconds back from our pro benchmark guys, so clearly has the pace and the talent as well, and flying the flag for the Xbox guys who are not doing too bad at all.
Yeah, and another driver, João Pedro, third in this year's time trial, consistently one of the fastest drivers from Brazil. What I like about that, Naomi, it just shows how global this competition is. That's a brilliant thing to see, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think that's one thing that's really important about esports, is it takes away so many entry barriers, and that's why you've got so many competitors all over the world competing, which is so unique.
Kenan, a brilliant Finnish driver. Why are there so many good Finnish drivers? I'm putting you on the spot there, Nick. Olli Pakala, who performed a few years ago. You've got Joni Tormula. Is there something about being in Finland that makes you a good driver?
Well, they're very serious guys, aren't they? They're very serious. They're never happy with their performance. They always want more, and you can see that they're pretty perfectionists. They're perfectionists, aren't they? They don't just settle for second best all the time, you know?
Yeah, Kendon, winner of this year's Challenger on the Xbox. Pro Draft last year, didn't get selected. this gives him that sort of opportunity to go, hey, you didn't pick me last year, you made a mistake. That's a good element to this Pro Exhibition, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure it is. It sort of gives them another opportunity to show their racecraft, to show their pace, generally how they are as competitors, gives them a second shot.
Yeah, and when we go to the head-to-head, which I really, really like as a sort of assessment level, it just really brings out the best of you. You know, you only get one opportunity. It's the best of three, isn't it, Naomi?
Absolutely. I think it's the hardest possible challenge. I find qualifying type scenarios the most difficult because they are so precision and so conscious type driving, whereas racing is a lot more instinctive. There's literally no room for error here. Track limits, especially on esports, is something you don't want to, come in contact with. So yeah, big challenge.
Yeah. Now, I was sort of taking the mickey out of Matt Gallagher, but out of those assessments, if you were to do one right now, which one would you choose that you like and your least favourite out of those four?
I'd probably say I would go for the head-to-head. That looks like a lot of fun. I wouldn't really say there's anyone that I particularly don't like, but yeah, maybe the adaptability with the dry to wet.
Yeah,
that could be challenging.
I like that. Very competitive, Nick. Listen, Matt Gallagher, do you forgive me? You've got the leaderboards. Am I forgiven now?
Well, Tom, it's amazing what you'll say about me when I can't respond. So it's interesting whenever I go on the touchscreen, you're just having it at me. Anyway, let's have a look at the leaderboard, shall we? In-game event leaderboards. This is the Max Verstappen Austria single players, many times as you like, and it's Gabriel Meneghetti right at the top. The benchmark, remember, Danny Moreno, 172,388. So a little bit behind the PC guys, not as close as we saw to Kapua earlier on, but 3 of them hit my 170,000 or above benchmark. All the rest of them need to improve. But no, that's fine. As long as you're kind of there or thereabouts and you prove yourself in the other multiplayer events, then it's OK. Let's move to one of the multiplayer events, which is Bahrain. And would you expect Meneghetti at the top? Yes, you would. And there he is. So he is 20 minutes 55, which is 2 seconds or so behind Moreno, which is very much F1 Esports standard. Down the bottom, Dizalewski is going to be really disappointed with that. 22 seconds back, so clearly a mistake because no contact, it's a ghost race. Looking at Rutten, good performances, kind of all the way down to sort of 5th, 6th place. 5 seconds off, not too bad. Let's move to China. Wet, much more challenging, and it's Meneghetti once again at the top of the leaderboard by 6 seconds. And only 4 seconds behind Rasmussen again. That Freddie Rasmussen time is something else. But Meneghetti definitely getting himself on the radar of some of the F1 Esports teams. Oates as well, not a bad result in P2. But yeah, you can see some of the drivers down the bottom really did struggle in the wet conditions, which will affect their adaptability score especially. Let's move to the bracket now, the final one. That's the one-lap knockout, and it's Dizalewski, who had a really difficult multiplayer races, winning the 1v1s, and in fact, we have Meneghetti out in the first round to Dizalewski. So lots of crazy stuff going on. I thought it was going to be a Meneghetti clean sweep. It wasn't, Tom.
Clean sweep for Meneghetti. I think I pronounced that right. Here's the thing. I want to look at the player cards now and see that rating, because Meneghetti has got the highest overall rating that we've given for a driver, 88.5. And then a player there, a driver, Antoine de Zalewski, a French driver. I'm going to throw it out there, Alpine. Could sign for Alpine. Is that too predictable there, Nick?
Not necessarily. I mean, you could be. Let's see how close you are, Tom, with that.
OK, well, we can only find out in the pro draft. Naomi, in terms of those score, I mean, there's not much in it, not as high as Alessio Di Capua with 93, so a little bit off from the PC, but flying that flag for the guys.
Absolutely, but as you can see, what we mentioned before, there's some people here with a little less experience with higher points, so it's really a balance of all the points, and you can tell that the drivers are already well balanced.
Yeah. Now, these 4 assessments, we assume some drivers would do better than others because of what they're doing in leagues, and we've seen them race in qualifying. A guy that stands out, and I want to see his card actually in the player ratings, Jed, flying the flag for Great Britain, Norgrove, didn't do as well as we thought he would do, and that's hence why a lower score there. He was the winner of this year's time trial on Xbox. Red Bull, AlphaTauri interested in him, but something like that, do you think that could deter a team from picking it up? And I'm not trying to pick on Jed in any way, I want to make that very clear. It's just he didn't perform as well as we expected, but maybe teams are going to ignore that to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, you're still looking for a driver that's got the full package, and he might have made a mistake and not be fully there and in the mix at the moment, but it doesn't mean that he might not, get stronger and stronger as the year goes on, as he gets more opportunities. Clearly, actually not far away in terms of qualifying pace, which is great. I think it's just maybe just racing, consistency and experience that needs a bit more help with.
Yeah, I love those player cards. If you've got a high score, you'd be like, yeah, deserve it. And if you've got a low one, you're like, nah, this is rubbish. Here's the thing, Naomi, because I am very excited about this. The women's wild card, a fantastic initiative to bring more kind of basically interaction and participation of women involved in F1 Esports. And this is a great thing, surely.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole reason why W Series exists is to widen participation for women. I mean, for a big platform like yours and like ours to be raising awareness for women in the sport is huge because, you know, for me, for example, when I was a young girl in racing, there was no one around me who looked like me. And actually, your brother Nick was the only person at the time. He just started racing Formula One, and he was the only one who I could look up to and say, he's something like me. So for us to have a platform like this and a W Series to look up to people, like if you can see it, you can be it. And that's what this is all about. And I think it's a great initiative. Yeah,
and we were watching some highlights there. That was an Anglesey. How cool was it? It looked like a moment when you looked out on the wide shot. It looked like something from Game of Thrones. And then what was it like to actually go around the track?
Amazing. I mean, it's been a year. W Series was off last year due to COVID, so it was really great to get back on track, have our pre-season test and get ready for the season, which starts at the end of next month. So really exciting, great to be back, great show, and looking forward to it.
Well, I love this initiative. I also love the fact there's so many brilliant female sim racers out there making content already. Tia Musson, who competed in the Virtual Grand Prix, and also I've worked with Maxine MXM, as you're seeing right here, a brilliant person to interview, to chat. The content they're making online is only gonna give, like you say, Naomi, sort of eyes to go, oh yeah, for any woman out there who could be like, I could actually do this. I can see Maxime doing it, Tia Musson, who you're seeing on your screen. She just wanted to have more women drivers in, and that's what her YouTube channel's kind of all about. That's a great thing.
Absolutely, it's all about changing perception. I mean, as we all know it, motorsports is very much male-dominated, and the more female faces we can have in the sports, the more people will be inspired, and the more participation we'll have at grassroots levels, and that's what the sport probably needs, yes.
Nick, in terms of content creation, do you think maybe Naomi should start that, YouTubing, maybe something like that to...
Definitely, I think Naomi's got a great face for it, and the fact that she's representing the W Series, which is a fantastic series in itself, stands for really strong, powerful women, which I think is really important. And clearly having Naomi here today, I think is a great showing for us. And I think we're very lucky to have her on the show.
Definitely part of the family now. And unfortunately, because we haven't booked you for the next F1 Esports, I think, yeah, I didn't want to say it, but maybe we, yeah, okay, so that's awkward. Listen, it's time to look at the women's wildcard assessments. Obviously, we look now at Rebecca Morrow stepping up into the competition, and no easy feat this to go straight in it, and but very competitive and doing a good showing for herself.
Absolutely. I think, this is definitely not easy. This is a very high level of racing. For her to have made it through in the wildcard and be keeping up close to the pace is already really good. And the more women we get involved, the more that potential will grow as well.
Yeah, and we're looking at the conditions that change and really being put through paces, which is only going to improve any driver that is competing in the Pro Exhibition. It just improves them, and then whether they get through this year or get selected, they'll be back next year. It's just improving every step of the way.
Yeah, even for people that don't make it or don't make the cut, it's still something they can carry with them for the next year. They get more experience, they're used to the scenarios, they're used to the structure of it all, so they'll just get better and better with every year that they get.
Yeah, and obviously looking at Rebecca's player card with the score as well, everyone got one of these, which is great to see, and the adaptability there, so going from dry to the wet conditions, showing how good she is. So there you go, you saw the player card for Rebecca, and I believe we can chat to Rebecca right now. Rebecca, are you there?
I am, yeah.
Oh, great to have you on the line right now. I want to know, Rebecca, obviously your experience goes back to 2004 when you were competing in the Formula Women event that was held. I just want to kind of know, how did you get into sim racing?
Yeah, well, being a fan of motorsport really from a young age had a lot to do with it, and I went into gaming anyway, so the two just came together like that.
Yeah, and I have to say, we were commenting earlier on from footage of you racing, there is a lot of merch on the shelf behind you, not just an F1 fan, but just from merchandise as well.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a Jensen shrine.
And obviously, seeing other women like Tia Musan or Maxime MXM compete and the content they're doing, that would have inspired you to get involved in this wildcard as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think everybody, all the ladies that are putting stuff out there, they're braver than me for doing it. Yeah, you know, to get girls involved in sim racing, I think it's where to go, and hats off to them for doing it.
Yeah. How did you find the assessments? All of us want to know. How were they and how were the conditions in terms of going from the dry to the wet?
Not too bad. I mean, you know, it's something that you come across in just playing game anyway. I enjoyed every minute of it. Although the first one did actually turn out to be a bit problematic more than what I wanted, but I had to take myself off, have a word with myself, and then managed to crack it a few times.
I've got Nick and Naomi here who've probably got a question for you, but I just want to know, are there any drivers that you look up to at the moment or potentially in the sim world?
I don't think you can get away from what Emily Jones is doing, you know, some of the events that she's doing and races that she's took part in. Yeah, living the dream.
Living the dream. Naomi, a question for Rebecca?
Yeah, I guess I would probably ask Rebecca, you know, I get asked a lot, what does it feel like to be a woman in a male-dominated sport? And this is obviously a male-dominated sport at the moment as well. So, Rebecca, how does that feel to you?
It's the one thing that spurs me on to actually carry on doing it. There's a bit of animosity online, shall we say. But yeah, I just use it as a tool to spur me on to get even better and improve. And it's good when you actually beat the boys.
Absolutely.
Any question for you, Nick?
No, I'm okay for now.
OK, great. Well, listen, I will say this, though, because I want to know future aspirations for you then, Rebecca. I had a taste of this with the Pro Exhibition. What next for you?
Well, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to carry on doing what I'm doing because I enjoy it that much. We'll have to see if we can get back here again another day, under different circumstances.
Yeah, well, listen, I tell you what, Rebecca, we look forward to having you back competing next year in the Pro Exhibition, and fingers crossed for the Pro Draft, you could get selected by one of the 10 F1 Esports teams. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
There you go, Rebecca Morel. Guys, we should now look at the PlayStation assessments.
Welcome to the F1 Esports Series Pro Exhibition.
All right then, PlayStation assessments. Naomi, Nick, very exciting. We've talked about Xbox, we've talked about the PC as well. And with the PS4, obviously Matthias doing a fantastic job starting off, taking the lead on the dry conditions of Bahrain. And we know how difficult it is when you're competing against guys that are pretty much at the same level as you going into this, but you have to hold your nerve, and it seems like he managed to do that.
Yeah, consistency is key, and you can see that they're all so close on lap time. Just general pace looks very, very consistent as well. And you can see there, with the whole ghosting scenario, it actually benefits a lot of people. They seem to maybe brake later than the car in front of them, and instead of colliding with them or getting held up, they're able to continue going through their own lap. So basically, they're almost racing against themselves. It's like a mini time trial themselves, but just the elongated version.
Yeah, now Jarno Ottmar mentioned earlier about a driver to look out for, Valentin Bruffer, winner of this year's Challenger series, did an amazing job. But there's also Domenico Lavice, pro draft destined, and didn't get selected. So again, another driver who's like, I've had a taste of this, now I'm back and I want to get signed. And you can see it with the drive, but sometimes that might push them to make mistakes because of that desire to get it.
I mean, obviously, any amount of pressure can make people make mistakes, but I think, you know, having done it once, coming back, he knows which points he's going to have to focus on. He would have matured by it, and it can only be an advantage.
Yeah, and when the head-to-head comes along, we do get to see them battle it out, but look at those conditions. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't want to be behind the wheel when the conditions are that bad.
I actually prefer the wet. I think the wet is fantastic. It separates the men from the boys.
Okay.
And yeah, I think it's as I said, it's all about you know, being consistent. Throttle modulation is absolutely everything, but wet conditions, I would say, is definitely my favourite.
Okay, and then going to the head-to-head with the guys, and you see what it means to them because they're getting to set that track, get some extra points, and hopefully the F1 Esports teams will see them and potentially sign them. But once it's done, you almost have to kind of forget about it for those drivers who didn't do well, who got knocked out in this stage. You have to sort of put it back and then concentrate on the next opportunity you get, right?
Yeah. Well, failure once doesn't necessarily mean it's a permanent condition. You know, you make mistakes, you don't always succeed, and you just have to look at that, find out what your weaknesses are, work on them, but don't ponder on it. Don't spend all day, all night thinking about what you did wrong.
Yeah, we spoke about earlier on, Naomi, about in terms of practice time. In terms of a good balance, should you be practicing as much as you possibly can behind the rig and allowing a bit of data time to put some own analysis in? What would you think is a fair balance?
To be honest, I think every driver will be slightly different. When I started with the Esports League last year, I was driving a lot, even ended up getting a little bit of carpal tunnel, so that's no good either. But everyone will have their own balance. It's about, you know, what works for you. But obviously, as much seat time as possible is always going to be beneficial.
Okay, and a man who's experienced a lot of that. More the data analysis, would you say, Matt? What's the leaderboard saying?
Well, I'm about to tell you, and thanks, Tom, for not throwing to me with an insult. Right, here we go then. This is the PlayStation leaderboard, of course, starting again with the single-player experience. And something you'll notice, only 2 of the drivers in the 170,000 benchmark. But look at the amount in 169,000. So I'd say the PlayStation lot, I suppose, for want of a better word, are so closely matched, and you'll see that over the course of these 4 assessments, how it chops and changes. Bruffer, who was Jarno Opmeer's pick, right at the top for the single-player experience. But as we move to the multiplayer, and Bahrain as the first one, 25% dry experience. If we move over to that, we'll see that it changes very quickly. There we go. Ayamulo then goes to the top of the standings, 20 minutes 57. You look at Moreno, 4 seconds or so just under behind Danny Moreno. But you look all the way down and you've got Bruffer down in P9, 7.5 seconds back, so clearly made some sort of mistake because, again, I must reiterate, it's ghosting. It is just pure pace. So not a huge amount of excuses available apart from just not performing on the day. But Ayamulo at the top, then you've got Van Erven, Parnell. So it's just all changes. As we move now to China, the wet, probably the biggest challenge of the 4, and Parnell moves to the top of the leaderboard with a 4 minute 50 seconds, 7 seconds back on Rasmussen, so probably the slowest lobby of the 3 that we've seen. And then you've got Leveche in P2, and then again, Bruffer, Jarno Opmeer's pick, he's clearly jinxed him like I'm very renowned for doing, down in P8. So it just shows how close it is. Again, like you see these sort of 13, 14, 22 seconds back, clearly mistakes and maybe pressure getting to these, and that will really impact their overall rating as we look at that towards the end of the show. Now let's have a look at the 1-lap knockout bracket, and it's Leveche who wins. So it's completely chopping and changing in this PlayStation lobby. And then you see that the runner-up was Bruffer, so that's much better from him. Clearly, you know, showing that he's got some of the minerals, I've used that word again, to show exactly that he's got some of that. He can deal with the pressure. So finishing second is not too bad. A few drivers out at the start. Hofland, Ayamulo, who won one of the first assessments, was out in the first round. So it all changes. Loving it, Tom. And who's going to get picked? I don't know.
Oh, you make a very good point there, Matt. Who will be picked? Interestingly enough, no draft this year. So the 10 F1 Esports teams can pick whoever they want. They will approach the drivers, which makes it very exciting this year. That means some of the best drivers could have multiple offers. They will be in demand. Chen Bulabassi, what do you say to that? Teams can now approach the drivers to pick them up.
I mean, that's going to be amazing. Imagine being an esports player and you're approached by multiple official Formula 1 teams. That's like a dream coming true.
Yeah, you're just sort of hedging them off. What's the contract? How much? Talk. Listen, Chen, I do want to ask you about the player ratings for the PS4 and some names. Valentin Bruffer, Jarno Opmeer picked him as someone to look out for in the Pro Exhibition. Have you raced against any of these guys? Timon Schutter, Dario, Lemula? Any of these guys you've raced against?
I don't think I have yet. But I hope I will at some point, but I don't think I have yet, unfortunately.
Okay, well, you're looking at that, guys. A little bit low on the experience for Dario and Liam Parnell, but they make up for it in the pace. So, hey, have a look at those F1 Esports teams. You know the ratings based on those 4 criteria. Will they be getting the call? And some of the lower people down there, as I say, Liam Parnell, not as high as maybe we thought he was going to be. Chem, I wish you the best of luck for your races, GT4 and Paul Ricard. You missed out on today, though. I don't want to make you jealous, but the new F1 CEO popped in midway through some of our links and had some pictures with us. Stefano Dimicali, who just popped in for a photo mid-link. I was just trying to do a link, Chem, but I wasn't put off. Look at my face. I was that excited.
Maybe next time, Tom.
Now, Chem, I want to ask you quickly before you go, one driver, in your opinion, that we should look out for?
Ooh, I'm going to say Sebastian Job because I like him as a driver, and I think he'll do really well. So I support him. All right, well, thank you very much, Chem. All the best with the races. Lovely to see you again. Can't wait to get you down here at the Gfinity Arena. Nick, in your opinion, who sort of stood out for you today?
It's got to be Josh Adobu. For sure, I think he's looking really, really strong. Pretty much on like all 4 assessments so far, probably looking the best, and I think he deserves it.
And Naomi, what about yourself?
I actually have to agree. I think Josh Adobu did a really good job, and I think for me personally, I think consistency and adaptability are the most important points, and I think he was really consistent throughout all the challenges, so I think that's a great sign. So I'll go with him, but I think Alessio Di Caprio obviously stood out as well.
Okay, Matt Gallagher, you've been over by the touchscreen, doing an amazing job. Anyone stand out for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's got to be Alessio Di Caprio. I couldn't really believe his single-player event score, being only 32 points behind the best in the world that Danny Moreno had set. And that just shows that he's got the absolute raw speed that he needs. Maybe he just needs to harness it. Maybe the 23 tracks available to him, he'll need to do it at every single one. But for me, Alessio, if he can really take that throughout the entire calendar, he might be one to watch.
Oh, well, listen, thank you very much to all the guests that I've spoken to today, to Naomi, to Nick, to Matt Gallagher, to the whole team, and for you guys for watching at home. Can't wait for later on in the season where we will have the F1 Pro Championship. See you then.